Thanks, Martin. Well, I've been teaching for 40 years. I was a yoga teacher before I began to study Pilates almost 30 years ago. And I was privileged to actually seek out 5 of the Pilates mentors, the elders.
Okay.
And what was fascinating about studying with each of them, it has been a deeper understanding of the width and the breadth of Pilates. And that's what interested me. It's like, because it wasn't studying, beginning with Ramana, there was a particular way to understand. And definitely she did preserve the body of work, and didn't change it. But she also taught from a dancer's perspective, because Joseph Pilates was a boxer and she was a ballerina. So there was a perspective that she taught through that was very valuable. And then each of the others, being with Kathy Grant, what was so interesting is when I'd go to New York, I'd work with Ramana and do an immersion with Ramana, and then I'd go over and do an immersion with Kathy Grant. And they were like, Ramana was no props. That's not Pilates. And then you walk into Kathy's studio and she'd be like, props everywhere. Let's get whatever you want to use. This is
whatever
great.
Gets you where you need to be. Yeah.
And and it was so fascinating. I found that, wow, that is so fascinating. So that was a teaching for me, and then going on and I've done studies with many great pioneers of somatic movement and breath, energy medicine, and Marolfer. And all of that has brought me to a place. One of the interesting things that Ida Rolf said that drew me to want to study Rolfing was gravity is the therapist. And I thought, oh, what does that mean?
Yes.
I want to understand what that means. So that was what became a wow. And that's another part of where Cora's relationship came from, because the fact that I could give my weight to gravity and have uplift happen naturally, rather than that I've got to lift myself up, I've got to do something to myself. No, it's natural. Gravity and ground reaction force ground reaction force is gravity's partner, right? It happens naturally. So that's been an amazing and powerful path that I've followed, and that mentors, and that when I mentor teachers, that's what comes alive, is the beauty of that biointelligence of the fact that, like you're saying, it doesn't matter whether someone comes into the program and they've been teaching for 3 years, which is the prerequisite, or they've been teaching for 25 years. They all become deep friends. They all become collaborators, there for one another's,
collective interest.
Yeah, exactly. How do we lift up all the boats? How does everybody become greater? And that is deeply transformative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question just on behalf of the young teachers who may be listening. You walk into Ramana's studio and there's no props, and this is the way it is. You walk into Kathy Grant's studio and she has props, and they're both brilliant teachers. How do you as a teacher navigate what's going to be your truth and your experience when you see that from 2 authorities presenting in different ways?
Right. Well, I think that this is a great question, Martin, because it's really not about doing either way. That was their way, right? And that's what I think is the most important thing to begin to look at, is what is a prop? When we begin to question, be curious of what is a prop, guess what? The reformer is a prop. The Cadillac is a prop, right? It's not my body. Right. It's something I'm relating to.
Yes.
But we don't think of those as props.
That is a
we think of a ball
point.
as a prop.
Right. You think of a small, yes.
Yeah, but of course it's a prop. It's something. Now there's a whole other thing. So now going to Cora's relationship rather than core control, because core control would have me do something to the reformer, or the reformer does something to me.
Right.
Now, in Cora's relationship, I'm in relationship with myself, gravity,
Yes.
other people, and
Yes.
my environment. So when I put my hands into the straps of the reformer straps, I am meeting the strap, and the strap is meeting me. It's a relationship, which is very different than I'm going to do something to the strap's going to do something to me. And that's how people get caught in, why can't I do a teaser on the box? You can't do a teaser on the box because your elbows and knees are doing too much force. You're trying to pull the strap rather than engage the strap in relationship to your, what I call the waterfall down the back of the shoulder blade, sit bone, tailbone, into the tripod of the foot, and the internal lift up the front that happens from inner ankle, inner thigh, internal lift along the front of the spine to the inner ear. Wow. This is like a whew. Let's do something just especially for teachers who may kind of think of, well, what in the world is she talking about? Let's do something that is so simple. Two things.
Okay.
One is, what are we talking about? What is that feeling of down the back, up the front, right?
Yeah,
Gravity
right.
and ground reaction force. So let's do this. Put your one hand on your low belly right below your navel.
Okay.
And now pull your shirt down in the back. Pull your shirt down so you feel how your shoulder blades glide down the back.
Okay.
You see that?
Yes.
So now notice, do that, keep pulling your shirt down the back.
Mm-hmm.
Inhale through your nose. And as you exhale, pull your shirt down and notice how that feeling of down the back engages the front of your pelvic floor. The lift up the front happens naturally.
Yes.
That's what I call shoulder blade to deep belly, and that works with your whole body.
Yes.
That works with your feet going one way and your inner ear, the lift of your head goes the other way from that feeling of the front of your pelvic floor.
Yes.
It is lift.
I felt that everything, there's this, well, it's a relationship. Everything's in relationship. Yeah.
It is. Yes. Yeah. So now the second one is really fascinating too. So there's your down and up. Now let's look at space. Let's look at creating a spatial feeling in your body and how your eyes, the way you look through your eyes, affects your whole body.
Yes.
So put your hand at your chest.
Okay.
And just feel feel your skin under your shirt like that, and just feel the temperature, the texture, the tension.
Yeah. Okay.
Like a tension on it. Now, look. So we're going to look at two ways of looking. Look forward as though you're trying to read something really, 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 really small, like the way we'd be on a phone or on the computer, like that. We're kind of straining a little bit.
Right.
And just notice what happens to your whole body as you look really, really small. You see how things kind of contract?
Yes.
Beautiful. So now we're going to practice peripheral vision. This is the lateral aspect of your body. Allow your eyes, you're still looking forward, but allow your eyes to see the sides of the room.
Yes. Okay.
It's like, you see how you can still see forward and yet you can see around you?
Right. Yes.
And notice how your whole body just goes, whoo, and opens up.
Yes. That's
how children see. Children see that way because they've not been conditioned to read here and contract and strain and all that. They see all around them like that. So that is called peripheral vision, and that's just a distinction. See, that means that you have that opportunity. All the time, it's not like, and I do all these things and I'm just perfect. We're human beings, right? We all get caught in the narrowing and all that. I get caught all the time.
Yes.
And how do we reset?
Yes.
How do we reset? We have to reset when we notice that everything's crowding in. Reset, which is very different than what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Why does my head feel like? We're unraveling the problem.
Right.
We're noticing. And that's core is relationship once again.
Yes. I hear that on two levels, right? Like with my counseling brain too, when we get stuck. I was just speaking with a dad a few minutes just before coming on air, and he was just sharing how that sense of feeling like he should be doing this and he should be doing that and he should be and that becomes that tunnel vision, right? Like I'm not doing enough. And then to open your vision to see all the things that are there and are around you, and that you're there, that are your blessings that are in front of you already, instead of being so locked in. I heard that on both levels. Like that's how we live our lives. We live our lives so closed in.
Yes.
There's so much of it that is out there and open and available to us. Like I'm
Yes.
looking at you and I can see my TV to the right. I can see my whiteboard to the left.
Yes.
Or I'm trying to read the next comment, like the little thumbs up from Blaze Pilates there, right? Like I can see both are happening. So
that's so beautiful. And it's that makes the difference, isn't it, Martin? It's that,
absolutely.
It's that ability to widen our perspective, widen our perception, that allows us to then live in our body in a more spatial way. We're more receptive. We're less armored. We're able to see things from not just my point of view, but this is not just my truth. What is your truth? What is a way of looking and being able to see from a broader perspective? And that's so much of what we're so challenged today with so much. This is how it is.
Well,
right?
what you're saying in there too, Wendy, is just like validating other voices and validating other perspectives. Like we're giving value to those, and that ties into Emmett's comment here earlier when I was asking, how do we, choose what message we listen to, and it's not an either or thing. And his comment was, knowing that the masters, quote unquote, all develop their own approaches to the work is a quote unquote permission to any teachers to explore their own way.
Exactly.
Yes.
Totally.
Exactly. Yes.
Emmett, that was what I got. I really got, rather than, well, this is weird. Why is that one doing that? And why is that doing that? It was like, oh, this is so wonderful.
Yes.
Because what does that do? This, you see, I see Pilates as a living system.
Yes.
I honor, and I hear that from you too, I honor the gift of what Joseph Pilates gave us. And yet, he died in 1967, and we really don't know how he would have continued to evolve the work. We don't know.
Yep.
But that's who he was. He was an evolver. He was someone who was constantly creating. So that's just, it seems plausible that he would have a base of information, and then he would have ways of building on what he'd done.
Absolutely. When I was doing my master trainer certification with Viper, are you familiar with the Viper piece of the cylinder, the weighted cylinders?
I'm not.
Okay. Michelle Dalcour is a gentleman I'd love to have on the show at some point. Probably one of the smartest guys I have been taught by. Absolutely brilliant in space. And he talks about loaded movements and fully integrated movements. So instead of like a bicep curl, he looks at, farmers and like these farmers' kids who come out to a hockey practice who hadn't lifted a weight all summer, but are in game shape walking into first day of training camp because they've been baling hay, lifting and doing all these things.
That's right.
They're full body integrated movements the whole time. So he translated that into his work with Vipers and this weighted cylinders, and all the exercises and the exercise prescriptions are fully integrated, whole body integrated movements.
Right.
So, and what comes off of that was the way he taught was like, these are the principles and go. And our whole teaching thing was like, you make up whatever exercise. I want you to think about this movement pattern, make up an exercise, come back, present it to the group. And all I want you to do is explain why.
Yes.
If you can explain why, you are free to do whatever you like.
Exactly. Which is why that's it at first is really confusing to people who mentor with me because they so want to be told. Many people want to be told, how do you do this? What are we going to do? How do you explain it and all that? And I just say, we're going to explore this and then let's see what happens for you. Let's notice. And you can also become very discerning of if you get caught in a particular thing, you begin to be able to unravel the problem.
Yes.
Because problems, a local problem is always supported globally by the body, the whole body.
Yes.
So it's kind of like this. I brought a couple little props that we can kind of look at, people who may not have seen them. But the body works like this. That's what Martin was just talking about. So we, rather than a compression of my head, my shoulders, my pelvis, my feet, everything just being stacked on top of one another, that's an old way of looking at ourselves. It's not actually a functional way, which Martin was just speaking about. And this is what's called biotensegrity.
Yes.
This is, imagine this, see how there's the bones look separate from one another because my wrist, my hand, and the bones of my wrist can move freely. The bones of my shoulder can move freely. My arm can move freely. And yet my arm is connected to the spine, to my leg, through the connective tissue, through the fascia, through the blood, through the muscles, which is all soft tissue. Soft tissue supports hard tissue because bones are just mineralized fascia.
Right.
So that's so fascinating. So everything works. So if one part moves, everything moves. So my hand is connected to my foot all the way through my body.
Yes.
And that is a force transfer. That's what the body knows. It knows that feeling. So that's what you just talked about so beautifully, Martin, that I think is being more and more appreciated. But that's really what Pilates needs so much, because that's what Pilates is really all about. It's not about control. It's about a cooperative way of being with ourselves and collaborative way of being with one another.
Right, exactly. And then just echoing something that was said yesterday with Justice Rowe is that now I'm coming alongside you in your fitness journey. So while you're exploring this and you're discovering it, I'm a guide of some sorts, but I'm not giving you the map and I'm not Google. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to get there. I'm just kind of guiding you along the way, and I'm coming alongside you in your journey as you explore these things and giving you some of the education, accountability, motivation, but this is your work to own.
Beautiful, beautiful. So there are two questions that I use as guiding principle questions. One is, what can I let go of that I don't need to be doing?
Yes.
Which is a life question on every level.
As I move, that record.
Yeah, it's a great one. Another is what's just enough effort for the movement.
Just enough. So yes, the efficiency of movement.
Yeah. So then whether you're doing something really soft or whether you're doing something fast and quick and hard, and each one of them has just enough effort. And that's what Simone was looking at yesterday. She's used to being able to she's just so efficient, and everything is just, how does she nail and stay in the mat doing these phenomenal movements? And she could just feel, this is not working. This is not me. Mm-hmm. And so that was so interesting to another piece I saw where she could feel that there was too much effort for the movement, which was not her.
Right.
So interesting.
So interesting. And I gravitate to the courage component of those decisions. When you listen to your body and make those decisions, I think we don't appreciate sometimes how much courage it takes to do that on multiple levels.
Yes.
You know, your parents that have invested in you, your friends that are depending on you, your fans that are your coaches, the people, like, not just your enemies, your friends, like, that are everyone. Like, there's so many layers to making decisions in having the courage to listen to your body and unapologetically do what's best for the community via yourself?
Well, I think I love what you're pointing to because it's very interesting. Aristotle said something about 3 threads of friendship,
Okay.
or of just being, transformational friendship.
Okay.
The first one, and most of us function in the first 2, which is you really enjoy being with one another, and we do things for one another, like that. The third thread is where the transformation occurs, and that is where you act according to the common good. You make decisions that are part of we rather than me. And that becomes a friendship that you have with someone. That's what my mentorship is all about. I'm very clear about that. That's what this conversation you and I are having right now is all about. It's not based on information. It's based on collaboration, right?
Yes.
We're in a collaborative relationship. So we're building something. We're actually sharing our experience of life and our teaching and what's important to us from a place of a gift.
Yes.
Of saying, this is, I'm so grateful for this, and this is what I'd like to share. And that is transformative.
It's funny, Wendy, because you say that, and just being very transparent here, the times that I've felt, I won't say attacked is a strong word, but almost offended when someone has accused me of saying that this platform is selfish. Like, I'm using this to elevate my game. I'm elevated to elevate my profile. It's self-serving. And I've heard people say that to me of this, and that's their thoughts. And it's interesting that of all the things that can be said about me, that's the one that is furthest from the truth, because I love just elevating other voices and presenting all these different people and hearing their stories and all these things. So when someone says that to me, that's the thing that I take the most offense to, in a sense of saying, like, that is the furthest thing from the truth. And the thing that I really most want to get out there is the fact that this is for the community. This is for everyone. This is for you. This is for those who are watching. And the people who are watching right now and preaching to the choir, they understand it. They get it. So I don't need a bunch of people in the comment section saying, no, that's not true. You're awesome. Right. But right. I feel like it's funny that just reflecting on it because of what you just said there. I was like, that's why that gets me mad when I hear that, because that is the vision.
Yeah, but there's also something else. And that is because people have said things about me at different times. And that's the thing that is another clarifying factor, is that we want to look at, I'm always looking at, where am I coming from and where are they coming from?
Yes.
And when you look from that place, rather than just get into your head about what somebody's saying, because it's easy for us to get into our head. I mean, we're human, right? We're going to get into our head. Yes. But then to back up and look at, okay, where am I coming from? Is there an authenticity to what I'm doing? And where are they coming from? Because usually a comment like that is based on a total misunderstanding of celebrating ourselves. There's nothing wrong with celebrating who you are and bringing other people along.
Right.
It's a great thing. That's a great thing. That is what we're doing. The other thing is that part of the, what we talked about earlier, the breaking things down and demeaning people, which is where core control, once again, is coming from.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about people who talk about core control. I'm talking about a thing called core control that we can let go of.
Yes.
And that is gossip. Gossip and demeaning people and shaming people is just based on fear. We know that. Yes. We know it. But often we get caught in it. We get caught like we should defend it. And you can never, ever, ever defend with somebody who is coming from fear, loathing, shame. You can never, because you're talking into a conversation that's not going anywhere.
That's not going anywhere, right?
No. So it's like you can't, but if someone is willing to have a conversation, then something else can come out of it. Like I'm really sorry that you feel that. Why are you feeling that way? And if someone comes, then there's a meeting, and it could be, political views that are very disparate, and yet there's a willingness to have a conversation, and something else can be created out of it.
Yes.
That can actually be a working together toward the common good.
Yes. That's the beauty of conflict. I say all the time, like, conflict should make a relationship richer.
Yes.
It should. If you're working towards something, and that's different than a fight. That's different than someone just fighting to be heard, and like that, all those different things. Like, this is when you're in relationship, conflict comes to make things richer. So, yeah.
Well, I think that's also, I just have a sense and have experienced that we're anesthetized into thinking that everything's supposed to be great all the time. And if things aren't great all the time, something's wrong.
Right.
And that's not life. That's not life. That's not reality.
It's comfort. We want to be comfortable.
We want to be comfortable, and yet we really want to be challenged to be our best.
We say we want to be challenged to be our best.
Well, you take on something that is a challenge, and there's going to be breakdown. There's going to be things that are going to, like with the mentor program that Elaine was just talking about. I mean, last year I'm used to having 6 people in the program, and then got a waiting list for the next year, and COVID just went, oh, that's not happening.
Gone, right?
And so we just navigated together, and that's what was so beautiful about what I've experienced with Elaine and some of the other practitioners who moved from last year to this year, and we started all over again. And it was at first, they said, well, are we going to do the same homework that we did last year? And I said, that we started with. And I said, we are going to do that. But guess what? You're not the same. Mm-hmm. And the homework won't be the same. And they were all, as they began again, they went to a whole other layer of what we were exploring on a deep level of fascial understanding and movement, and just looking at cueing and body awareness. And so it's kind of like looking at breath.
Sure. Yes.
How often do we think, years ago, I was teaching a workshop years ago at a conference, and a teacher actually left about a quarter of the way and walked out and put on her feedback form, why do we have to talk about breath again? Have we already handled that? And I thought, whoa. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, we have not handled that.
Clearly, we have not. Those are the 2 topics I wanted to touch on. One is breath, and the other is men in Pilates, because I love your vantage point on that. But let's talk breath first for a moment. How much do you emphasize that in your teaching and your teacher training and your mentoring stuff? Like, is that kind of like a central piece, or is that one of those things that, let's talk about this because it's usually not talked about?
No, it is central. It's central because without breath, we're dead. Yeah. And so I don't look at it as a thing to do.
Right.
I look at breath as our metabolic need that is responding to our metabolic need. And so I have practices that we explore and move into. And one of those is nasal breathing that I've been teaching for years. So I don't teach inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth.
Okay.
Very interesting. Now, see, here's once again curiosity. Mm-hmm. I inquired into, and I asked each of the elders that I studied with. I didn't get to ask Ramana because it wasn't obvious to me at the time. But I asked all the other elders, where did inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth come from? And they said, I don't know. It wasn't how Joe taught. I thought, isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
Yeah, because how he taught breath was in the air, out the air. That's how he talked about breath.
Yes.
And so he didn't teach people how to breathe. He just told you to breathe completely. Breathe fully. Be sure you're breathing and do whole body movement and and so forth. And so what I began to really examine, because I was interested in coming from a pranayama background in yoga, I was interested in, well, what is that? What is that breath that we do in Pilates? And then as I began to study the importance of nasal breathing, which I don't know if you've studied that as a distinction, but as an athlete, it transforms your performance.
Yes. Because
breathing through the mouth, it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. That is the emergency breath. Breathing through the mouth, the body thinks, be on alert.
Yes.
Nasal breathing is calming. So that takes us into a relationship between parasympathetic and sympathetic. Plus, nasal breathing opens up the airways. Which example? Put your tongue at the bottom of your palate. Let your tongue rest at your lower palate, and then just breathe through your mouth first of all. Notice where the air goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now keep your tongue down and close your mouth and breathe through your nose. And still notice where your air goes. Nasal breathing with your tongue down. Yes. So this is, once again, not what I'm teaching, but it's a very, very important thing to understand. If where the tongue practice, where the tongue sits, can open up your jaw, open the jaw, relax the temporal, the TMJ joint, and open up the airways. So when the tongue rests at the upper palate and just sits behind your teeth, and your teeth are open and your mouth is closed, the nasal breath goes really deep. Yes. You feel how it goes really deep? Because that's going into whole body cellular breathing.
Yes.
And it's also going into the lower lobes of the lungs, which is where the major oxygen and blood exchange takes place.
Interesting.
So yeah, it is very, very, and I worked with a fabulous 400-meter athlete, Sonia Richards-Ross. I went to Beijing with her at the Olympics.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And I was just in the process of teaching her nasal breathing, and but it still wasn't kind of locked in at that time. But still, she got bronze in her individual because she was so nervous. She didn't like the lane she was in. There were just numbers of things. She was in her head about her body. But for the 4x400, 2 days later, after we got together, and I said, you got to get out of your head and get into your body. So let's do some things. We did some things. She went out. You can look at it on YouTube. The 4x400 at the Beijing Olympics, and Sonia, when she was the anchor, when she came on the field, the Russian team was way ahead, and she was like turbocharged, and she was nasal breathing. And you can see she's going past, and she passed that runner, and they got gold. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So nasal breathing is a calming. It's coming to the present, brings us present.
Yes, that's yoga speak too, right? Coming to the present for the most part. Would you say?
Well, it's in the yoga vernacular, but coming to the present is somatic. It's about the body, being in touch with the body. You know, it's a conversation with. That's another term that I like to use: a conversation with my body versus doing something to my body.
Yes,
so that's another distinction, right? What is having a conversation with?
Anyone else writing everything down that Wendy says right now?
I am constantly writing things down. I hear people say things, and I'm like, oh my God, that was so great.
That's so good.
And that deepens this, I know, because it deepens things that you're committed to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It enhances it. Absolutely. And always is pulling for those little things. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So beautiful. Yeah. So breath. So then once I began to understand nasal breath, then I went and studied Buteyko. I got certified as a practitioner in Buteyko because I was fascinated with how many people were coming in with COPD, with asthma, with allergies, with so many sleep apnea, all these things. And I thought, this is a simple thing, but it's profound.
Yes.
How can I help people to help themselves? And so that's where so many of the practices that we do in the membership program and at PCA, Pilates Center of Austin, is my studio in Austin, Texas, even though I live in Asheville now, but I go to Austin to mentor the staff and to work with the Passing the Torch mentoring teachers twice a year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have an answer for this question, because I think the answer is it's going to be a real depends kind of answer. But for someone who is new in the Pilates space, just got their certification, maybe 1 to 5 years, what would you recommend they do next as their continued education outside of the Pilates space? Like, what do you think is a good place for them to go? Focus on a breathing certification, a weightlifting certification, like other tools for your toolbox. If you just have your Pilates cert, where would you recommend someone go next in their learning?
Well, I would say to look at who you're drawn to.
Well said. Yes.
Yeah, to study a deeper understanding of what moves you, because you've studied Pilates, you've learned the basics, you've learned the moves, and now how do you deepen your relationship with yourself, with other people?
Yes.
And there's lots of great work out there now that people are just opening up conversations around breath, around a somatic way of understanding who we are and how we relate. There's so many beautiful bodies of work. Take a Feldenkrais class. Take a body-mind centering class. Take a class at my studio, because the classes, many of the teachers at the studio are immersed in this conversation. They're immersed in that. What is it to be in relationship with myself as I'm in relationship with this movement that I'm doing. So we want to keep cultivating a deeper awareness of what Pilates can be. Think of it that way. What Pilates can be, rather than this Pilates is a thing that I now have to lay on people. What is Pilates? What is this beautiful body of work? And what is the hundreds? You see, think about, you're going into a movement like the hundreds, and rather than, okay, this is what it looks like in the book, or this is what it looks like by that, what is lying on my back? What is lifting my legs? What actually is helping me to lift my legs? Is it gripping my belly and my shoulders and that, or are my legs rooted through my breath to my breathing spine? Wow, what a conversation. How does the relationship of breathing actually allow my arm to move through my shoulder girdle to my breath and my spine?
Yes.
So there is a amazing way that my body, then it becomes my hundreds rather than the hundreds. You see, you want the movements to be personal. You want to teach someone so the movement is personal for them, not something they have to memorize.
Yes.
What is this that they're doing? And the other piece is that I think we're so caught in the end result. Here's me doing this thing, which can be fine. That's great, you know, and that's part of performance and that's the fun of it. That's another big lesson that Simone gave us yesterday, is that she was committed to the process rather than the, oh, something's wrong with me, and so therefore I've just got to do this thing. No, she knew that there was something bigger. So the process is, it's great to have your hundreds be, put your feet on the wall, be close to the wall, so your feet are on the wall, and then press gently into the wall, like you were talking about earlier, Martin. When you press into the wall, you feel this force transfer coming from your feet through your inner thigh to your inner ear. And you reach through your arms, or even if you have a hard time letting your shoulders relax, put weights in your hands. Put a 3-pound weight in your hand, or a rock that weighs 3 pounds, and feel that when you reach toward the wall, towards your feet on the wall, you'll feel how your body will connect. It will connect your vectors, right? Your limbs to your internal support system. And that pelvic floor palate that we just played with a moment ago, that feeling of breath, is going to connect your arms and legs and your head to your spine. And suddenly you find that you're in your hundreds in a way that you've never been. Because you're not gripping and holding and pushing, and your legs are tight and your knees are pushing the way, and all of a sudden your back is arching. And no, you don't have to go through all that. You go through this feeling of connection, collaboration. Your body is just going, oh, this feels good. A conversation with your body. Yes. You change everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel like I should be paying for this conversation. Like, send me an invoice.
You are fabulous.
This is good stuff. And we're past 11 o'clock, and I haven't even asked you. Now, all these things that we're talking about, too, there's this conversation within the body. What's your thoughts on teaching Pilates to men? Because I feel like the conversation internally is the same. It's almost like you wouldn't have to change.
It is the same.
Yeah.
It is the same, but you have to meet each person where they are, right?
Right.
So guys have different wants and needs than women, you know? And so how do you meet? Like, if I'm going to work with you, I'm going to find out what you want, what you're looking for. Now you're an athlete, you know, but if I'm working with a guy who is deconditioned, for instance, or who has something going on, I'm not going to start talking about a lot of, you know, embodiment and all this kind of thing. I mean, I've got all that's in the background that's helping me to be effective, right? Yes. But I'd find out what's important, what is important, which you want to find out with everybody, you know, but particularly with men who are just kind of looking for, well, is this for me?
Yes.
Well, okay. So you're looking to get out of back pain. I just worked with a guy the other day, 85 years old, 2 knee replacements, ex-military. So just a kind of, guy that's just very straightforward, sweet as can be, sweet guy, but just really straightforward. And but his wife had one idea of what she thought the session should be about, because she'd worked with me, and she was like, "Oh, and what about you? You do this?" And I said, "Well, that was for you. Now let's see what he's looking for."
Right.
And I just asked him, you know, and he said, "I just I've got to do something about my knees. They bother me all the time. My neck and shoulders bother me all the time." I said, "What do you do all the time?" He said, "I'm on the computer a lot." So I showed him on my body. I said, "Put your hand right here on the top of your sternum." Right there. And he put his hand right there on top of it. I said, "Now let that drop down and notice what happens to your head and your shoulders." And he went, "Oh, well, they're moving forward." I said, "Yeah, and your head's a bowling ball, weight." Yes. And that's where your neck and shoulder tension is all probably happening from. And that will affect your back. And so this right here, this little point right here where the bone, where your clavicles connect, is where your whole shoulder girdle is hanging, like that. Everything's hanging from this. So if you drop that, everything crawls forward. And he went, "God, I had no idea of that." I said, "But now you know." So now this is, and I said, so, and this, you'll love this, Martin. I said, so I want to let you know two things. One is, I can't promise you that at the end of the session, you won't have any discomfort or any pain and all that. I can't promise you that, but I can promise you something. And he said, what's that? And I said, I'll promise you that at the end of the session, you'll have a brand new feeling in your body. Your body will feel amazing and connected. And he looked at me and he went, wow. I said, yeah. He said, how do you know that? And I said, I know it. I know it because I feel it and it happens all the time. And you have never felt what this work feels like.
Yes.
And that's what happened. And at the end, he just went, whoa,
Yeah.
wow, my knees, they just feel different. Because I put him on the reformer, had him bend and straighten his legs, but not from a knee. He began to see the problem, how he uses his knees for effort rather than being in his feet. And I put my hands, which we call in the mentorship program, we call core to core cueing, whole person to whole person.
Yes.
How that I use my hands to connect him with his feet. And I put a sandbag on his pelvis and had him put his hands there and feel the lift that happens as he bends and straightens his legs. And he was like, wow, this feels so amazing. I said, yeah, because we're teaching your knees how they're connected to your whole body. Very different. So you see, that's where I would go with guys. I've worked with numbers of guys, and it's just always amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get a read pretty quick in terms of how well they're connected with their own body, what their conversation is within their own body, and that will guide you where you go.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I'd love to have a session with you sometime.
Love it.
Me too.
That would be so fun.
We'll talk about that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I just see if there's any comments here. Hip Healthy Chick Tasha Edwards said curiosity. We were talking earlier. Such a wealth of knowledge. That's you. Great. Integrity Pilates was in earlier. Amazing. And Rich Reese Pilates just came in. Hello.
Beautiful.
I can't thank you enough for this time, Wendy. I feel like I could talk to you for like 10 more hours and just keep asking you questions.
Me too. I'm so grateful for what you're doing, Martin. I'm grateful for the collaborative conversations that you're bringing forth, and for the opportunity to be able to talk with you and just share things that matter to me, and because I know as we talked about earlier, I know we're building something.
Yes.
And that's what makes the biggest difference for me.
Yes, absolutely. There's a comment from Natasha. Yes, is there any, Elaine's question. Is there any room in your mentorship program for next year?
Well, actually, thank you for asking, because I'm just in the process of establishing who's going to be in the program next year. So if you're interested, email us at info@pilatescenterofaustin.com. And we can just have a conversation and see what your interest is and all that.
Yeah. Okay. And actually, Wendy, if you could put that in the comment section when I put this back up, actually. So when I save this, and then you'll see the comments, and then you can just put it up in there too.
Okay.
And then that will then people will know where to find that. That's great. That was so rich, Wendy.
Well, I'm just, I'm still learning how to type.
Yes.
While the phone is in the air. You're teaching me so much, Martin. Post. Is that it? info@pilatescenterofaustin.com. Yes, that's correct.
There you go.
Okay, good. Yes. Well, you're a doll, and I appreciate you so much. And thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the, collaborative conversation.
My pleasure. All right. And thank you to everyone who is watching and sharing and commenting. And I'll send you the replay for this later. Thank you so much, Wendy.
You're so welcome.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.